Hi guys, welcome to my firewall policy rule demo on a FortiGate firewall. So the version of the FortiGate we're using is the FortiGate VM, which is the FortiGate Virtual Edition. And I really like the FortiGate firewall policy rules because it's like a central hub of the firewall where all the features and functionality come together, which we will have a look at very shortly. So if we go to policy and objects, IPv4 is selected. Here's where all the firewall policy rules are created or can be viewed from. On the top right, we've got two options, view options. One is the global view, which shows all of the policies in order of their sequence. Left hand side, you can see the sequence 1, 2, and 3. We've also got the section view as well here. So if we click on this, this is the view I tend to use, which is similar to the global view, except that as the name implies, it is divided into sections. By default, the sections are based on the paths between the interfaces. So these can be referenced as known as interface pairings. So for example, all of the policies referencing traffic from the WAN to the DMZ will be in one section, and all the policies referencing traffic from the DMZ to the WAN will be in another section, as you can see on the left hand side here. So WAN to DMZ, they're all in this section, so all the policy rules will be in here. And then DMZ to WAN will all the firewall policy rules will be in here. You've also got at the bottom an implicit deny, which denies all other connections. Also, what we can do in these firewall policy rules, if we right click one from here, we've got some more options we can choose from. For example, you can edit the policy, you can delete the policy, insert a new policy above it, insert a policy below it. You can show matching logs for this policy. You can enable or disable this policy, cut and copy the policy, and if you cut or copy the policy, then you can paste before or after another policy. And at the very bottom, we've got the insert section. With the insert section, it is possible to add customized subsections within the default section of the interface pairings. So this will be useful in a situation where you have lots of policies and you would like to further compartmentalize them by common attributes, such so that things are easy to find. So if we click on insert section and we specify something like DMZ to WAN web servers, so you may, for all your web server rules, you may have a subsection and put all the firewall policy rules within this section here. So it's very good for organizing your policies when you have lots of policies. Also for finding policies, we have filters. So if you click on these little filters here, you can specify the source address for this column, or you can do that for any particular column. Let's say service, and then you can specify a particular service. You can also click not to do the opposite, so specify the services not to look for and filter on everything else. You can also right click on the columns and you can remove columns or add other columns from here as well. And to create a new policy, we just go to create new from here. So we'd create new policies from here, and the first parameter we'd need to specify is the incoming interface. So choose the interface from where the traffic will be coming from. So let's go for WAN and choose a source address. Let's go for the WAN subnet from here. Source users, so this parameter is based on a user identity that can be from a number of authentication services, such as integrating the firewall with Active Directory for identifying users. So I've not integrated with anything, but you've also got a local firewall database and you can use that as well. So we've got a local guest account here, so I could use that as well if I wanted to. You've also got source device type as well. So the device identity refers to policy where access through the FortiGate firewall is dependent on the specific device being used based on the MAC address of the device, or even belonging to a group of devices that are based on the device types, or belonging to custom groups as well. So this is really good for mobile devices, etc. You want to identify with the MAC addresses. Then you've got the outgoing interface. So you'd specify the interface the traffic will leave the firewall on here. We've got WAN selected as the incoming. Let's go for LAN on this one. You've got the destination address. Let's go for the LAN subnet. and then you've got schedule here. So optionally you can schedule the policy. These schedules are actually created from object schedules down here, and you can create one-time and recurring schedules from within this option here. Let's just leave that off. Then you've got actions. So the action can either be accept, deny, or IPsec if using a VPN tunnel. So if we scroll further down, we've got lots of other options. As I mentioned earlier, it's like a central hub, so you can see all these options you've got, and you can configure that. You can turn them on or off from here. So firewall network options. The first portion is the NAT, so you can enable or disable NAT for this rule from here. And if we turn it on, you've got three further options down here. So to use destination interface address, or to use dynamic IP pool, or to use a central NAT table. So use destination interface address. This will use interface address as a source address and do port address translation. You've also got fixed port here. So some network configurations do not operate correctly if a NAT policy translates the source port of a packet used by the connection. So NAT translates the source port to keep track of connections for a particular service usually. So you can enable fixed port when configuring a security policy for NAT policies to prevent the source port translation. However, enabling fixed port means that only one connection can be supported through the firewall for this service. But you've got the option there. But you can also use dynamic pool instead. And if we have a look at the options in here, we've got some types. The first type is the overload. This is the default setting where clients can share share pool of IP addresses with dynamic source ports. Then you've got the one-to-one. This is a one-to-one mapping of IP addresses. So an external IP address is always translated to the same mapped IP address. If using IP address ranges, the external IP address range corresponds to a mapped IP address range containing an equal number of IP addresses, and each IP address in the external range is always translated to the same IP address in the mapped address range. You've got the fixed port range, so you can use fixed port ranges as well from dynamic IP pools. So you can select the fixed port option to restrict the FortiGate unit to not translate the source port. So again, some protocols or services will only function if they use a specific source port or source port that does not change. So normally source NAT changes the source port to allow multiple simultaneous connections. This final option, port block allocation, this setting is used to allocate a block of port numbers for IP pool users. So two variables will have to be set, block size, block per IP user here. So the block size can be set from 64 to 496, and as the name implies, describes the number of ports in one block of port numbers, and the number of block per user determines how many of the blocks will be assigned. Yeah, so this number can range from 1 to 128 for block per users. Let's just cancel out of here. And the last option is to use the central NAT table, and the central NAT table, if selected, it basically has more control with more granularity for the FortiGate unit appliance. So with the central NAT table, you have full control over both IP address and port translation further than any of the above options. So if this is used, it will use the central NAT table, which can be accessed from policy object central NAT here. So it's a lot more granular to use the central NAT table. Then we've got the web cache, and web caching will cache the web content if turned on, and so it will improve performance of traffic passing between locations on your WAN or from the internet to your web servers. So you can turn that on from here. You've got WAN optimization as well. So FortiGate WAN optimization consists of a number of techniques that you can apply to improve the efficiency of communication across your WAN. And these techniques include protocol optimization, byte caching, web caching, SSL offloading, and secure tunneling. Protocol optimization can improve the efficiency of traffic that uses the CIFS, FTP, HTTP, or MAPI protocol, as well as general TCP traffic. And within the WAN optimization, you've got the two options, active, passive. So active passive WAN optimization requires an active WAN optimization policy on the client side FortiGate unit and a passive WAN optimization policy on the server side FortiGate unit. So depending on whether this unit will be client or server, you choose one of these options here. And you can also have a profile. At the moment it's selected as a default profile. You can create these profiles within the WAN optimization section down here as well. You can create it from here as well. So you can specify your protocols here, etc. So if we go down here, we've got our security profiles, and with security profiles, it enables you to instruct the FortiGate unit about what to look for in the traffic that you don't want or want to monitor as it passes through the device. So these profiles are created and configured within their relevant areas and then applied here within the security policies. For example, if we were allowing HTTP traffic for users browsing the web, then we may want to apply a web filter security policy to this policy. So we can turn on web filter if we are using the security policy for HTTP, HTTPS traffic for users browsing the web. And all these profiles are fully configured from within the security profile section here. And the first one is antivirus. So the antivirus security profile is used to catch viruses, which is protection against the transmission of malicious computer code, sometimes referred to as malware. So the antivirus filter works by inspecting the traffic that it's about to be transmitted to the FortiGate unit. And then we've got the web filter. The web filtering is a security technology to ensure the content cannot be viewed, so usually defined by categories such as gambling or social sites. So it is efficient to also make sure that the content cannot reach the screen, as well as catching viruses. So the content cannot reach the screen in the first place, and this is the role of the web filtering profile. It's basically filtering of websites. Next, we've got the application control. So application control is designed to allow you to determine what applications are operating on your network and to also filter the use of these applications as required. So for example, Skype can be blocked through the firewall. The next one is IPS. So intrusion attacks against vulnerable operating systems is a more targeted approach to malicious cyber activity, and the IPS security profile is used to protect those systems. Next, we've got the email filter. So protection for emails, such as spam through the use of email. DLP sensor. Data leakage prevention is used to protect against sensitive information from leaving the network. So protection against leakage of credit card information or other sensitive company or personal information. Next, we've got VoIP. So voice over IP is essentially the protocol for transmitting voice or other multimedia communications over the internet protocol network, such as the internet. And the security profiles VoIP option apply to the SIP application level gateway to support SIP through the FortiGate unit. So the SIP ALG can also be used to protect network from SIP based attacks as well. We've got ICAP, which is the Internet Content Adaptation Protocol, which offloads HTTP traffic to another location for specialized processing. So the purpose of this module is to send the incoming HTTP traffic over to a remote server to be processed, which will take the strain off the resources of the FortiGate unit. It's usually used for antivirus or manipulation of HTTP headers and URLs for checking those. And the very last one is the SSH inspection. So if your FortiGate unit has the correct chipset, it will be able to scan SSL encrypted traffic in the same way that regular traffic can be scanned. So the FortiGate unit will essentially receive the traffic on behalf of the client and open the encrypted traffic to check it for malicious content. So decrypt it, check it for malicious content, and send it on to its final destination. We've got traffic shaping here. So with traffic shaping, you can assign minimum levels of bandwidth to be allocated to specific traffic flow, or you can assign maximum levels of bandwidth to be allocated to specific traffic flows so that they do not impede other traffic flows. So you can define the maximum bandwidth and guaranteed bandwidth for the security policy. And there are three types of shapers as shown below. So the shared shaper is bandwidth management for the security policy as a whole. You've got the reverse shaper, which is basically you can define the traffic shaper for the policy in the opposite direction. And then you've got this IP shaper as well. So the IP shaper enables you to define traffic control on a more granular level, which is bandwidth management by user IP addresses. So you can limit the behavior of every member of a policy to avoid one user from using all of the available bandwidth. It is now shared within a group equally if using the per IP shaper. So with this method, it avoids having to create multiple policies for every user you want to apply a shaper to. There's also application packet shaping as well, which is not shown here, but an application traffic shaper, which is bandwidth management by application. So traffic shaping is also possible for specific applications for both shared and per IP shaping, and this is only configured through the UTM security profiles application control feature, and you can configure a specific application such as Skype, for example, for maximum bandwidth. Going further down, you've got the login options. So when you enable logging on a security policy, the FortiGate unit records the scanning process activity that occurs, as well as whether the FortiGate unit allowed or denied the traffic according to the rules stated in the security policy. So you can turn this off as well, which does not record any log messages about the traffic accepted by this policy. If you turn it on, we've got some more options here. Security events records only log messages relating to security events caused by traffic accepted by this policy. We've got all sessions, which records all log messages relating to all the traffic accepted by this policy. And at the very bottom, we've got the very last two options. The first one is comments. It's always good to add a comment to why this policy is required. In fact, today it makes the firewall non-compliant against regulations if there are no descriptive reasons to why security policies exist. So you should always add a comment, a descriptive comment why this policy rule exists. And finally, you've got enable this policy. So usually the policy would be enabled, but you may have a reason to disable the policy, so you have the option from here to do that as well, so you can disable that like that. If we click OK, the policy will be created. Maybe not, so it's asking us to specify a service, so we can specify a service from here as well. So if you have a look at the top here, you've got all, so if you wanted to specify all services, you can just click on all. I'll just go for HTTP, and you can also add other services as well. Let's say DNS, and you can add services groups as well as groups for destination addresses, source addresses, if you wanted to group lots of addresses into one group, and you can specify them from here, but you would create these in the objects section, so address groups, addresses, service groups, services, etc. So if we click OK now, this policy will be created. And so here's the new policy. Thank you for watching.